I'm Ji Radda. Anybody's work will be influenced by their background. I'm Korean. I had a fairly traditional training in art. I use gouache for traveling paintings because I like to paint on site. In the beginning, had something like this is Emerald Lake in Canada. This is a reflection of the mountains in here. It's just a postcard that I used to send to friends. And then I did some of these things. I was painting in a train when I was traveling in a train. So I had to do very fast kind of it's not particularly realistic, but what I saw just quickly. So some people write diaries. I do my diaries in drawing or paintings. And this was a university that I was studying Chinese for 3 months in this southern China. And usually Chinese campus is really beautiful. They usually have a big lake and boulevard. And this is one of, and the people doing Tai Chi with a fan. And this is a little bigger in size. This is again Emerald Lake. And this is southern Korea, an island called Jeju-do. Every Oregonian loves haystack. And then I also do some with the watercolor, but this is watercolor paper. And I don't know, you can see the difference, but I feel the watercolor is much more brighter than gouache. These are all gouache on mulberry paper. I emphasize mulberry paper because often people say it's rice paper, but it's actually mulberry bark. Maybe rice glue was used, but somehow British adapted that word as a rice paper. So it's a common name is rice paper. These are all sort of a small size. So I wanted to do something larger on site, but in traveling you cannot take a stretched large watercolor paper. So I was trying to see if I can do on mulberry paper. So at the time I wasn't using gouache, I was using watercolor. And watercolor paper, when I was painting this, it was very bright, but when it dried, because the watercolor pigment is so smaller than gouache, it sort of absorbed into the paper. So this wasn't very satisfactory. So I bought this in Korea, and this is a paints that you use for Asian painting. It turned out that because the pigment is larger, it stayed on the surface. So the color was still bright enough, and it has that soft feeling. Some of these things I carry around traveling is you can use this for, brushes, carry it here so you wouldn't, bend the brush hair. I take a smaller one, but this is what I use at home to hold the paper down. This is what I use as a palette, so you can have different colors. And this, even once it's dried, if you apply water, you can use it again. If you want to apply a little bit of water on paint, if you have a bigger bucket or something, bigger container, you might dump it a little more. But having something like this, you put a little bit at a time. Like this is the one I did in Bali, but this is all wrinkled up like that. But when I bring it home, I put the backing in the bag. I bring it in this just a little tubing, and then when I do this, see here's two layers in here. This stretch, both sides stretch out, but you have to use a similar weight of paper because it has to shrink and stretch in the same rate. And then this, like sometimes I take something like this watercolor paper, traditional watercolor paper, and this was in southern China, central Java. This was Sikha Center. There's a totem there. And this is in Beijing, spring flower. People who knows Lake Oswego area, this is Lake Oswego from Millennium Park. Any questions?
As you're painting, do you work, say, right to left, or do you do different?
You can do any way you want.
How do you do?
I do any way I want. Thank you.